There is a necessity to have complementing and sometimes conflicting relationship with different vertical heads as well. Do you encounter, how do you navigate through these situations?
I think one of the things it started off in Marico early is to say that, a culture of experimentation, prototyping, and it is okay to fail. There was a lot of investment made in culture. The culture of meritocracy, the culture of openness, transparency, the culture of empowerment. Sometimes, obviously, a founder has much more risk appetite. Sometimes a professional has less risk appetite because a founder is betting his own capital on it.
I have a feeling which is slightly contrary to this fact that risk appetite with professionals can tend to be much more higher because they are not managing their own capital. Give us a sense of how do you measure culture and what role does terms like the Marico way play, and how do you ensure that you inculcate this into people? That's a very complex sort of supply chain management challenge. Is there a structured strategy or drive within the organization to align its initiatives, its strategy towards enabling a sustainable future, both for the organization and for the country?
We see that, in terms of talent, there is always a war for talent. That how do you continue to create a culture of growth, a culture of innovation, so that we are continue to attract and retain the kind of talent that will able to foster this founder's mentality in times to come.
Wonderful. Given a choice, if you have a choice to say begin your career now comparative to then, which one would you like to pick up? When you began your career then, or would you like to pick up the ongoing times? My guest for this episode of Duologues is a leader who firmly believes that purpose comes before profits. He has been instrumental in transforming Marico, including building strong digital capabilities, along with several acquisitions in the D2C space, with operations across 25 countries, responsible for leading one of India's most trusted house of brands like Parachute, Saffola, Kaya, Beardo, amongst others. Please join me as I welcome Mr. Saugata Gupta, Managing Director and CEO, Marico Limited, to this episode of Duologues. So Saugata, thank you so much for agreeing to do this episode of Duologues with me. And I'm sure this is going to be very insightful and inspirational for all the audience. To begin with, I think the big question which comes to my mind is, when it comes to Marico, I think synonym is the name of Mr. Harsh Mariwala. And while I've followed his journey for a couple of decades already, the big question which comes to my mind is, when you look at corporates in specific into our country, I think the biggest of challenge happens when the transition from being entrepreneurial in nature, initial momentum being given by the founder of the organization, when this transition moves to being an organization which is starting to run and operated by professionals. I think this is a very, very critical phase in many companies. Marico is one great example which has witnessed this transformation reasonably seamlessly. And as is the case in most of the transitions and executions, they look beautiful from a distance, but I'm sure they have their own set of experiences. You've seen that in the first hand, and you're filled in large shoes. And I'm sure Mr. Mariwala continues to be the guiding light of the organization. I've had few opportunities in the recent past to hear him in person, and the kind of vision which he continues to lay out for the organization is very inspirational. So give us a reflection that how Marico has such successfully managed this very complementing relationship between the founder and a professional who takes this organization towards long-term strategic initiatives of the organization.
So I think firstly, if you look at the Marico history, I think Harsh realized in the beginning of the, when we are a young organization, 1990, I think that it is very important as to scale up to get the right professionals in.
Right.
And they were given an opportunity in terms of, it was already an empowered organization. And I think there was a lot of investment made in culture. The culture of meritocracy, the culture of openness, transparency, the culture of empowerment. And I think interestingly, we were working together for 10 years before I took over in 2014. So I joined Marico in 2004. There was a degree of comfort in that. And I think there was there was a significant amount of clarity on the roles. And I think it is very important that this kind of a transition might not have been successful if an external person joined in during that time. I think there was a high degree of comfort. See, I think in terms of, obviously we have different styles. Sometimes obviously a founder has much more risk appetite. Sometimes a professional has less risk appetite because a founder is betting his own capital on it. But I think in terms of the overall, there was a lot of alignment in the kind of people we are, in terms of, we both believe in focus, allocation of resources, belief in that talent makes a difference. We have shared beliefs in conscious capitalism, that if you do good to the society and all the stakeholders, good happens to you. I think some of the philosophies which we practice never compromise the long term for the short term. So I think a lot of, alignment that helps. And then I think we did that exercise where there was a significant amount of role clarity in terms of, and therefore I think it was pretty seamless. And it wouldn't have happened perhaps if there was somebody coming in during that time and taking over. That the 10 years we worked together initially also helped.
Right. You mentioned about risk appetite, in specific risk appetite being more with the founder. The way I have looked in, and while working for multinational companies almost throughout my career, I have a feeling which is slightly contrary to this fact that risk appetite with professionals can tend to be much more higher because they are not managing their own capital. You getting me? So, and this might be an incorrect perception of mine, hearing it from you. Would you like to elaborate on this? I mean, if I'm a professional and if I'm not necessarily responsible, so to say, for entirety of a potential failure of a strategy, I will assume a higher level of risk appetite is my feeling. While shareholders are entrusting the capital, which is being your responsibility, I completely relate and understand, but that might not be central to the founder's risk appetite in total. So if you can elaborate on this one a bit more.
So I think I'll give you a different, perspective on this. I think in a lot of cases for founders, the ambition is always greater than the resources.
Right.
So to give you an example, if you want higher growth, I need higher resources. For the case of a lot of founders, I think they might have ambition, but they might not have resources. They find a way to create resources.
Wonderful.
And therefore, I think that gives that risk perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say that I have seen this, and one of the things I find today, and it's very interesting, if you look at our sector, for example, if I look at some of the Indian companies who are perhaps in the recent times performing better. And one of the reasons is that one is, of course, is perhaps the risk appetite of the professionals who run it.
Right.
And maybe a little more long-term perspective. See, if you look at people like us, we actually, a lot of us do 1 term, 2 terms. And therefore, the perspective you have for a long term, in a lot of multinationals where you are moving, you business units and you do a 3 or 4 term, the perspective you take is a slightly more short term.
Sure.
And to me, that's the other difference, I would say, that risk taking increases when you have a far more long term point of view.
Right.
And see, I think nowadays there are a lot of founders, there is a lot of people who take risk, but risk taking is not about spray and pray.
Sure.
Risk taking is about, again, having a focus and then trying out different things.
Right.
And then finding out what is right for you.
Right. And you're a multiple business division company, and there are few verticals which are continuing to do well, continuing to witness a reasonable transformation for a lot of reasons. Innovation continues to happen at the level of product, and I'm sure at the level of processes also. The market dynamics continue to change. D2C platforms have started to play a significant role. While we spoke about the fact that how complementing this relationship with Mr. Mariwala has been, I'm sure there is a necessity to have complementing and sometimes conflicting relationship with different vertical heads as well. How do you navigate through these situations? And do you encounter situations where a potential conflict on the opinion in specific towards the the short-term goals exist, and how do you look at navigating them?
See, I think we have a long-term alignment on, on what we need to do. For example, a transformation journey where we realized, that if, a lot of companies realize, I think, that when your core gets mature, where penetration is high, you have to diversify. I think as long as there's an overall long-term alignment, it's up to each of the business units who work with me to drive the agenda. I think one of the things I talked to you about is that we have a lot of empowerment. The empowerment is with the how and not necessarily every time with the what. We are a company which is very experimentative, which is prototyping. I'll give you an example. I mean, 2020, I think we started the journey on digital sometime in 2017-18 when on a trip to US, I found when we were discussing with some of our investors and some of the guys out there that, a lot of D2C brands are eating into the growth of traditional incumbent FMCG companies. Their Ps are suffering, and the thought occurred to us that if we don't participate in it, we'll lose an opportunity for growth.
Right.
We made a very small beginning, took a minority stake in Beardo. 2020 during COVID, we took a 100% stake. I think that was a time we were not sure what we're going to do with it, given the fact that, the last thing on somebody's mind was male grooming and styling during COVID, the peak of COVID. We took over Beardo sometime in May to 2020. And I think ever since then, today we are well on our way with all the 4 brands hitting a ARR of nearly, we should be touching 1,000 crores kind of a thing. We are profitable in some of the brands. So I think we have been able to take risk. At the same time, I think calculated risk and also trying to, develop capability on the way. See, one of the things, risk-taking culture happens in an organization where has a culture of okay to fail.
Sure.
See, fear of failure is the biggest enemy of risk-taking and not realizing your full potential.
Right.
I think one of the things, it started off in Marico early is to say that, a culture of experimentation, prototyping, and it is okay to fail. I think
Marico and you yourself seem to be extremely focused on ensuring that you leverage on this term called culture. How can you look at measuring what culture exists? While I walked into your office, it was delightful to look at a term which stated the Marico way. And looking into your office premises, I saw the text mentioning, if I can say, they were like leadership principles or the values which define the organization. Give us a sense of how do you measure culture, and what role does terms like the Marico way play, and how do you ensure that you inculcate this into people where, into FMCG, the attrition rates can hit a potential 12 to 18% annualized, which means you're refreshing almost 25 to 30% people in every 3 years. So how do you consistently inculcate these values and these principles into the people within the organization?
See, I'll give you one analogy. I think one of the things we want in this organization is to have an owner's mindset. And I will give you a very good example what do you take a owner's mindset. A lot of us, when we just joined work, we used to stay in a rented house. Now, the way you look at, how you treat a house where you own versus where you lease, it's called a tenant mindset versus owner's mindset.
Sure.
So we call our employees members actually. And we want each one of them to embrace what I call owner's mindset, treat organization resources as if it was my money or my resources. And therefore, we try inculcating that. And there is a concept there is this book by Chris Zook of Bain, and he wrote this book called Founder's Mentality.
Yeah.
Now, what we said and that's one of the reasons you mentioned earlier about the smooth transition, is somewhere we continue to maintain that founder's mentality in the organization.
Sure.
Now, empowerment comes with accountability.
Right.
Now, what we intend to, and it's also accountability to outcomes. So, one of the things in this organization we encourage is that effort doesn't necessarily matter. It matters effort, but as you move up, you have to be accountable to outcomes. So, one of the examples we take, during one of our leadership programs is, it doesn't matter whether you take one person to move a wall or 20 people to move a wall. It's ultimately the wall has to be moved.
Right.
And therefore, one of the things we really inculcate in our leadership is accountability to outcomes. Because you can give empowerment, but you must have accountability. And that is what we drive. The other thing that is very, very important for us is the culture of meritocracy. And even if we have driven successful diversity program in this organization, we have managed to ensure that there is meritocracy and diversity and not ticking the box. Because for us, for diversity to succeed, we must create a enabling environment for different people to thrive.
Right.
It is not about just appointing so many people and saying, okay, I have diversity.
Right.
Okay. I think openness and transparency, we have something called very, very institutionalized open houses. Like we have every quarter, what I try to do is a kind of a, where we call it FaceTime.
Okay.
So we speak and then there are questions. It's not planted questions, but anytime.
Sure.
We have an annual, what we call OC, which is organization conference. Again, we encourage people to. So I think there's a high degree of, and I think the other thing is important is trust. I always believe the job of a leader is to create more leaders and not followers, including on social media. But I think, and therefore, the biggest happiness I get is if the people I worked with, now everybody might not get an opportunity in my company, but they become CXOs, CEOs. That gives you the biggest happiness. That can you create more leaders? And therefore, I think that is so. Therefore, if you really look at it, each employee we call it members. We expect them to make a difference, just like we want to make a difference to each stakeholder in the society. And I think if I look at it, as long as I give a challenging, enriching job environment, I think the ability to make a difference makes this one. So I would say that a lot of people leave Marico. Another interesting fact, a lot of people come back. So they might be leaving Marico because, we are a pretty lean organization. They might not have a role, but as well as the role comes back. So at one point in time in my team, I had 3 people who had come back and the CXO. So I think that we maintain very, very strong relationships with the alumni network.
Wonderful.
And they ensure that, they come back.
Wonderful. So you spoke, I think I understand. So culture is one aspect which potentially is an outcome of a lot of characters coming together. In our organization, I have a philosophy called 3C, which is about building capabilities, building characters consistently. And I believe that it's very complimenting and assuring to hear from you on those 2 important aspects of individual characters and the consistency of what it takes to evolve an organization while all of them come together. Are there some capabilities which cut across within the organization, wide capability, while maybe specific to a particular function or a domain, but do you, when you hire people, look at some specific capabilities in people?
I think 2 things. One is ability to take high speed, high quality decisions. See, unlike in a multinational, here we have to, and if you are an empowered organization, you have to start taking decisions. The second one is how do you manage resources? And the third is having grit. So resources, the way I define resources, it's just not money. Resources means your bandwidth or time. Resources is about how do you use talent and how do you use. So I think the resource allocation is something which a lot of people get it wrong. And the last is about grit. I think grit is just not about passion but resilience.
Yeah.
And lastly, I think one of the things I'm now realizing is you might have the great strategy, great vision, but sometimes people undermine execution. So consistent execution is something which, and I think, what gets tracked and what gets measured gets executed well.
Right.
So to me, that is one more area we look at is ultimately because if everybody starts doing strategy and envisioning, I'm okay with one layer doing it and having best-in-class executors right through in the system.
You're humble enough, but I must compliment and congratulate that from my point of view, Marico is a organization which is rooted into India but is a multinational company. And I understand that you have operations out of many, in specific, the neighboring countries. Bangladesh, you have done a significant effort in the years gone by. There might be some temporary challenges, though. Give me a sense that what's changing in our country, because when I look at some of the nations neighboring our country, SAARC, from India, for Panasonic also, we manage the South Asia business. I think in the consumer's journey, there might be significant differences comparative to, in specific, the urban markets into India and the semi-urban and the rural. Are there some complementing trends, or you are executing significantly different strategies, say, into India and Bangladesh?
So I think I'll just first give you the philosophy where we see our choice making for markets. We look at markets where they are emerging markets because we don't enter mature markets because the cost of entry and our ability right to win is not there. Secondly, you look at markets where the per capita there is high headroom for growth, which is a younger population, low penetration, low to medium penetration of categories, where there is a balance between general trade and organized trade. Because if there is a market with 100% organized trade, your entry barriers are pretty high. And I think one of the things we are doing, we as a company, which is very interesting, is that we look at categories where we have a right to win, and therefore 90% of the portfolio we are number one, 96% of the portfolio number two. So we believe that if you are either 1, 2 or 3, you don't have a right to win long term. So we then cherry pick categories.
Right. When it comes to Parachute and Saffola, what would these two brands contribute for the total, say, the top line of the organization?
It's actually reducing at one point of 80-90%. It's now around 50s. We have significantly, I'll give you an example of the kind of things we have done. From 2020, we started the diversification journey in digital foods and also in things like serums, male grooming. At that point in time, that part of the business was 6%. Now it's 22% of that business. It has grown 4x. So I think what we have been doing is rapidly, I think the realization that what gets you here will not get you to the next level, and therefore there's significant diversification.
Right. If I draw a parallel to electronics industry, I mean, I really want to understand how does the supply chain or the value chain for, say, a coconut oil would look like. For example, economic nationalism is cutting across almost all the geographies, and the environment is such that most of the large economies or potential economies would like to have their own protection. So, for example, for electronics, it's starting to become reasonably necessary to at least assemble the goods in our country. And so should be the case in the geographies which you are addressing. How are you looking at your mid to long-term strategy to address these potential challenges? I mean, exporting a packaged, say, a coconut oil would have been the case in the past, maybe the case in the next midterm. But how do you look at your long-term strategy?
Actually, we have 5 manufacturing hubs. So other than India, where we have multiple factories, we have actually 3 factories in Bangladesh. We have a couple of factories in Vietnam which serve Southeast Asia.
Wonderful.
We have Egypt that caters to
a lot of European nations. They have
Middle East and North Africa. And we have operations in South Africa. So we have multiple hubs. And I think there's hardly too much movement. Like, for example, we might be doing some brands out of India to Middle East. Some goes to US, but broadly it is within the region.
And how does the supply chain look like? Like, there would be something which would the very raw material would be going in from India? Can I assume
so,
like that?
No. So I think, again, it's a global supply chain wherever is the least delivered cost. For example, I'll give you an example. Oats. We started off importing oats from Australia. Today it comes from 6-7 sources. Copra, which is used for coconut, to copra, which is used for, that's sourced in India for Indian operations. For a lot of, for a Bangladesh operations, it's sourced from Indonesia. So it is again a completely global supply chain. To give you an example, I might source, say, something for my shampoo from China to Vietnam, but for the Middle East, I might source it from somewhere. So it's a completely, it's a global supply chain and a local supply chain, and depends on the lowest this one. For us, some of the South Africa stuff, we actually source some from India, some from Europe. So again, it's based on a total delivered cost basis. Completely.
That's a very complex sort of supply chain management challenge, because there are multiple SKUs and multiple locations for you to source, and I'm assuming there would be aggregation locations for raw material and for finished goods also, and there would be abundance of work in progress. Have you upgraded your processes and adoption of systems, the CRM systems and the inventory management systems, and forecasting can continue to be a challenge? How do you address, I mean, this can be great insights for people who are beginning, that how does an organization as matured as yours, with the complexity which it handles, the systems which it uses to manage their forecasting accuracies and supply chain efficiencies and things like that?
See, I think it's obviously completely automated. The only thing is we now have a lot of digital brands, and now with quick commerce growing, obviously there the forecasting accuracy and fill rates are not the best simply because of the fact that the explosive growth the channel is experiencing. We are also now investing in a lot of modeling and analytics. Obviously, in some certain cases where there is a long transit times, for example, if we are moving goods from FG to from India to Middle East, there are some transit times. But I think again there we have gone into kind of a order to ship to order kind of a mode in a lot of places. So I think it's a fairly and the other interesting thing is we are now doing a rapidly accelerated harmonization project of chassis, which is RM, PM and everything. So that maybe that, to give you an example, now we are going to move to across the globe, we are going to use 3 lids, for example, standardized.
Yeah, nice.
Or 2 tube sizes across.
Wonderful.
So those are the kind of standardization, harmonization we have done. So at one end it appears complex, the other end we are, and see, look at it, for example, we must be using perfumes in 200 SKUs, but again there can I harmonize into, and we work with say 4 or 5 core suppliers across the world.
Right. This would logically lead to the organization continuing to be driving initiatives into sustainability. Is there a structured strategy or drive within the organization to align its initiatives, its strategy towards enabling a sustainable future, both for the organization and for the country?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have obviously a declared objective in terms of whether it's on reduction use of plastic, getting into PVC free. But I think one of the things we have been able to do is that how do you get build a kind of a scenario where we have also using less plastic. See, using less plastic is obviously good for the environment, less for the cost. So I think one of the things we have done is that for all our sustainability initiatives has to provide value to the consumer in the long term.
Right.
And I think the biggest one is what we are doing is plastic, because I think FMCG industry uses a lot of plastic. We are also using the kind of responsible collection and this one. So plastic is in the area which is something which we are also looking at. The other thing interestingly we are doing is whenever we design a new plant, in the design of the plant, sustainability is built in terms of energy usage, in terms of water. We are doing a very good job in terms of using non-fossil fuel, or whether in using what I call the entire water usage. I think and therefore it is now built into the design of the plants itself.
Right.
And as I said that, just like when we talked about conscious capitalism and the purpose in the organization, and the fact that we want to have how are we making a difference to all the stakeholders, we don't believe this in terms of that how do I put sustainability just to make a nice attractive annual report. It has to get embedded into the culture and the operating model. And one of the interesting things I find is, and which I really love in the new generation, is they are very, very into this sustainability and care for the environment. And there is enough pride to work in an organization that cares for it. And also there is enough pride to work with brands in a purpose. And some of the things which we are doing, like for example, we have a Kalpavriksha Foundation working with the farmers to improve coconut productivity, or there's a brand called Shanti Amla where 5% of the profits go towards educating, and making skill building in children. And I think we find ability to attract people to work on these brands high. Because even Saffola wants to make, the nation healthier, heart healthy. So today, if you blend the role of the brand with a purpose to improve society, your ability to attract and retain talent also improves.
Right. So my last question in this particular aspect of your professional endeavors, where do you see the organization leading to positioning itself from a portfolio perspective and being a responsible organization within the country and beyond in, say, 5 to 10 years' time?
I think in portfolio, we are done a great job in diversification. And I think if I look at it, we want to keep on reducing our dependence on our core, which is Parachute coconut oil and Saffola edible oil significantly. We will become a far more I would say a balanced portfolio in terms of having more, having personal care portfolio, a strong foods player. Now, if you see globally, not many CPG companies can transcend food and personal care together because they are two business models, but we seem to have done it pretty well. I think digital is something which interests me. One of the vision is that, there are hardly any incumbent, FMCG player who have converted itself into a digital player. Digital successfully globally has been founder-driven companies which have become digital because they're digital first.
Right.
I think we have the opportunity to become one of the few companies who have done that conversion, and maybe, in this country be one of the most successful FMCG digital company also to coexist. We intend to become we continue to remain an emerging market company, but wherever we want to, be there, I think one of the things we look at is, am I one of the fastest growing? Am I one of the most innovative? And we don't look at profit straight away, but at least over the medium term, are we top quartile in driving profitability?
Right.
We believe that in emerging markets, as long as you keep on investing behind volume growth and market share, margins automatically comes. You shouldn't chase margins from day one. I think, as I said, that we are seen now, we are best in class in governance. We continue to be rated top class in ESG. We continue to get awarded in terms of, being top class in governance. I think we should continue to remain, if we have to be successful in maintaining this culture of what I call entrepreneurial culture as we scaled up. So can you be what I call a scaled insurgent? Sometimes what happens, entrepreneurial companies, when they scale up, they become incumbent. Right. So I think culture should be a thing that, and lastly, I would say that if I look at it, yes, India has a huge demographic dividend, but at the same time, we see that, in terms of talent, there is always a war for talent. And how do you continue to create a culture of growth, a culture of innovation, so that we are continuing to attract and retain the kind of talent that will able to foster this founder's mentality in times to come.
Wonderful. You surely radiate the energy which a very capable young entrepreneur in our country. There are hundreds and thousands of young entrepreneurs who radiate this kind of positive energy. In the first instance, how do you continue to have this abundance of energy continuing to surge in yourselves? What do you do? Like, it can be a demanding responsibility to sit on the chair you sit. How do you maintain that sanity and able to radiate that level of energy?
So I think firstly, I've always believed that you need to do something in life where you are good at, and you enjoy doing. As long as your profession, if you are not good at something you enjoy doing, that better be your hobby. And if you are good at something and you don't enjoy doing, you will have a burnout soon.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I've been able to pick something which, and I think, and every day, if you are doing something new, it's something challenging, and I think that makes a difference. And I think I am pretty focused. You can't be doing everything in life. So I think I've chosen certain things which I do. And so I think I've been able to find that rhythm and be happy and focus on a few things. I think that is where I've been able to do it. But I think the biggest thing is saying that is something new happening, is a growth happening. Obviously, growth makes you happy.
A sense of monotony may start to creep into you when you continue to do jobs which of course evolve over a period of time, but essentially life is such that we are walking out of our homes and getting into a cabin or a chair, visiting and meeting business partners. In that sense, we are in a potential loop, so easier said than done for me, at least. And therefore I want to really dive a bit more deeper into this one. How do you upgrade yourselves with the changing times? And what you spoke is a lot what the youth of this country would speak, and having a very clearer understanding to be able to maintain that agility in the organization. It is essential that rapid decisions are made, and rapid decisions can happen when people in the leadership position have a very clear understanding, of course coupled with data, to back their gut feeling up and enable consistent decision making, which means evolution with the time of the changing trends, etc., is very necessary. In this demanding schedule where you are up 24/7, how do you continuously upgrade yourselves of the changing dynamics?
I think a couple of things. I think one of the things you covered is agility, I think one of the things leaders should have is learning agility. And
how does it come? I mean, was this there in you since you were younger, or how would you become a leader and then you inculcate such things into
I think
yourself?
I was always curious. I think curiosity and is important. The other thing is, I believe a lot of times learning agility suffers when you have intellectual arrogance.
Sure.
And I'll give you an example. Why is it that we have been able to create this unique model where, we don't take 100% acquisition of digital businesses. We started with a minority, but now we take a majority stake, work with the founders for 3 years, learn the business and integrate it.
Interesting.
Now, we have been able to do it because of the fact that this organization has a leadership which they are a little bit, I would say, low on this intellectual arrogance and high on humility.
Sure.
That we are okay to say, I don't know digital. I want to learn.
Sure.
Tell me more. And the second thing is that it is okay to, I would say, embrace reality and say that this is something I will learn. And digital is a great example of this, learning mindset. Sometime in 2018 or 19, when we realized that this is something which is a long-term capability which our leaders don't develop.
Right.
Because if the leadership is not digitally savvy, the digital maturity of the transformation of the organization.
Will not happen.
So we started this concept called bottoms up,
Okay.
where we identified the most digitally savvy 6-7 youngsters and started mentoring the top team, including me.
Interesting.
Now,
reverse mentoring.
Yeah, this is reverse mentoring. And that is because we embraced reality.
Wonderful.
That this is something which I am not good at. A lot of times I think organizations suffer because of this, somewhere this intellectual arrogance and the success of the past breeds complacency and a reluctance to unlearn and then learn again.
Right.
And this is something which perhaps I always believe in and I want to drive it in my team.
Wonderful.
And as I said, founders know much more, and therefore we said that, okay, I will learn from you.
Right.
And it doesn't matter, for example, I will go to the Plix office next month, spend half a day.
Right.
And then there are a lot of things to learn and I say, okay, now can I transfer that learning to the core?
What is that which you are shooting now? What are you aiming at?
I think, as I talked about, that how can we become the most successful
Wonderful.
consumer digital company? And that will be a good thing, because imagine we are professionals. Normally, professionals, incumbent organization being successful in something completely, what I call, out of the comfort zone. So I think at this age, I want to do things out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. How does your day look like and how does your week look like? What do you do beyond, say, work? I also believe that there's nothing like work and life. It's all life. So how does your day and the week typically looks like, and potentially how does your year look like?
So I think I come early to work, and I think that.
What does early mean?
So I come in by 8:15, 8:20.
Okay.
And fortunately, I stay nearby. So it's a luxury in Mumbai that at least in the morning, it's a 10-minute drive.
Sure.
In the evening, it is not so because of BKC.
It's rush hour.
I think it's a 10-minute drive. I think I finish a lot of work early morning, and sometimes on unscheduled meetings. I'm pretty disciplined in that. I think one of the things I've learned is respect other people's time.
Right.
So one of the hacks I do, two things I do is, for example, if I keep some buffers during the day, 15-20 minutes.
Okay.
The other one, if I start seeing that in a series of meetings that, there is to prevent a late cascade, I drop one and then get it back to time.
Sure.
I think I've learned, thanks to COVID, to operate, virtually well.
Right.
I do enjoy life,
Sure.
but I think I focus again. There also make choices. If family is more important, I'll spend time with family. So I think it's about making choices.
Right. Yeah, but I think you are very blessed already, with whatever care you are taking, you are continuously radiating a lot of energy, and I'm sure you'll do much, much more if at all you consider taking more steps in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I think managing stress, as I said, is about managing self.
How does one, in the first instance, realize that one needs to manage stress? I mean, I give this very simple analogy, when 10 years before I felt the need and I used to do consistent meetings during the day, and towards the end of the day, I started to feel a bit of stress in my head, as if I was not able to concentrate on the screen. And then after a few weeks, I thought that I should go to get my eyes checked. And then I found that I had to wear a lens. And then it was much more clearer. So one, for this very simple fact, starts to realize when one wears a glass that now I can see more clearly. Taking the same analogy, how does one understand in the first instance? Because when you continue to roll, you don't really understand that there is something called stress starting to creep into you.
So I think two things, and I would say it a transition that happened, maybe when I was far younger, stress pushed me to do the best,
Sure.
somewhere.
Interesting.
Then one of my coaches, and I've had been lucky to have two coaches in
Sure.
my life. One of the coaches had talked about this question of let it be.
What stage of that of your life was this instance of the first coach? How old were you then?
40
Okay.
something, and then I had a coach who was helping me transit to the CEO role.
Sure.
So I think let it be was one phenomenon that you can't win everything, you have to let it be. The second thing is that there is no point being bottled up. A lot of people get stressed because they bottle up. It's okay if you're feeling something, and
Sure.
one of the things, maybe some people don't like me, but at least I am.
Let it be.
No, I am what you see, what you get.
Yeah.
I am not the person to sugarcoat you and then.
Sure.
So I think it's important to, while you control your emotions, be open and transparent in, that is
Sharing
one of
that
the
there is a
learning,
need.
that sharing expectations and this one. There is no point. See, at the end of the day, unfortunately, in today's corporate life, I keep on telling that I give this analogy of you're on a treadmill and doing kickboxing occasionally.
True.
And therefore, you have to make the choice. You can't say that, And number two is, I tell people that I work with adults. You can't be expecting parenting in office.
Sure.
And therefore, it's okay to, parents, always, irrespective of what the kid is, will say you are the best. But in this case, you can't be doing that. And it's okay to be open and transparent and share feedback. And that to me is also stress relieving, because if you are not being open and transparent with your team or other stakeholders, you are somewhere bottling up and building stress. And the same goes for any relationship. So I think it's important to actually be open, transparent, and that's how trust builds also.
Right. Given a choice, if you have a choice to say begin your career now comparative to then, which one would you like to pick up? When you began your career then, or would you like to pick up the ongoing times? And why?
I'll start a digital brand now. I mean, I can still do it. I mean, it's not
I'm
that
sure.
I can't.
Yeah, right.
But I'm just saying that today I think there's far more opportunity. That's why I said that was the career choice making. I did make sharp choices. Like, for example, as I said that today half of my batch in IIT in Bay Area and everybody, I didn't want to do it. So I think I was trying to make those choices, but today the choices are far more abundant. I mean, today I would have loved to pursue a hobby and then become good at it and maybe,
Right.
like for example, I always want to, it's too late in life to be a stand-up comedian,
Would you like to do that? Do you write down something?
Yeah, I do. I don't do stand-up comedy as such, but I have a dark sense of humor. Some people in my team pick it up, some people don't. But anyway.
Yeah, so thank you so much insightful. And this brings me to my last question. And this again, as I said, would be my own quest. Having already delivering consistent value and difference in the work which you do, in the life which you lead, what is that higher purpose, say, which wakes you up every morning to do what you do?
I think I always wanted to leave a legacy. I think it's important, and the legacy is very, very important. It's not about that this guy delivered quarter on quarter numbers, but it's about a legacy. It's about how, given that you're working with so many talent, as talked about, leaders, creating more leaders, so that how many future CEOs you have created. And at the same time, I think how can I contribute more to either the corporate world, to the society, some of the personal PSR I am doing, and to me that's important.
Right.
And I think the other thing is, I think what is most important is staying rooted. I always believe, and as I come from very humble background in the sense that my father, they were part of the partition and they came to India in 1946. And they led a very, very, and a lot of value systems have come from there. So I think one of the things which I have been able to do is the value of hard work, the value of integrity, the value of personal discipline, and therefore rooted in humility and authenticity, I think is extremely important. And therefore that is something I've never, whether it's your lifestyle or other things, I've never not getting spoiled by that. Whether so, see, I always believe that wealth is an end product. It's not the means, it's just this one. So I think and therefore happiness is more important, and therefore you need to be happy.
Right. I wish you all the best, everyone at Marico. As I said, this was very, very inspiring and insightful for me, and I'm sure this is going to be equally insightful for all the people who will watch this conversation. I must compliment you for the kind of energy which you radiate. More power to you and the organization in the time to come.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.